30+7 going to 23 this afternoon, and it makes us think of summer. And Dr. Peter Neiman, pediatrician to the stars, we call him. We love to have you back.
Good to be here.
Thanks for coming in this morning. And the topic that we're tackling this morning is a big one for a lot of parents and a lot of kids. Summer camps, sleepover parties are stressful, especially if your child battles bedwetting. This is a topic that, the more reading I did about it, I realized it's very, very common.
Yeah, it's common. In fact, about 500,000 Canadian kids suffer from this problem. And, you know, at age 5, it's about 12%, 15% of kids that have it. And then at about age 7, it drops to about 10%. Age 9, it's about 5%. And by age 12, maybe 3%. So there is a downward trend. And so as you get a bit older, the problem becomes less and less. But the key thing here, I think, is for kids who have this problem, we just don't appreciate, Suzanne, how much this impacts their life in terms of not going to a camp and those kind of things.
Socially, they tend to withdraw a little bit. Is that what you see?
They get withdrawn, and it's not exactly kind of stuff that people talk about in a school playground or around the supper table. So they become very private. In fact, I'll never forget one particular patient where, you know, as a doctor sort of winds up the interview, I was winding up my interview, and the mom said, "Oh, just one more question." And as soon as the mom said that, the kid said, "No, mom, no, no, no." And the kid knew his mom was going to talk to me about bedwetting. And he just did not want to bring it up and then the mom said, of course, you know, don't worry, he's a doctor, he can help us. But the point there is the child was so embarrassed. And it's not the child's fault. That's another important point to make, that he or she cannot help it.
And so when you're talking to parents, what do you say to them to help their child deal and cope and not be embarrassed?
Well, I think it's important just to take a few steps back and say, why does this happen? There are about 4 key reasons why this happens. Number 1 is genetics. In fact, if you have one parent who's a bedwetter, about a 50% chance that their child would be a bedwetter. If both parents have the problem, it goes right up to 80%. So I usually joke with kids or with families. I say, you know what, if you get married one day, just make sure your spouse doesn't have bedwetting if you're a bedwetter, because 80% chance your kids will have this. So genes play a big factor. Small bladder volume is another reason. And then absence of a hormone called antidiuretic hormone. And then, so genetics and small bladder volume and deep sleep, those are the big reasons for this.
And I made the assumption that this was mainly a boy, probably, a male problem, but it's not.
No, it's more common in boys, though, by a factor of 2. So for every 2 boys, you will see 1 girl with this particular problem. That's why I often just refer to he. But no, it does happen in girls, too.
Okay, now, some of the reasons, you said bladder volume.
Bladder volume is important, and before we went on the air, we quickly talked about this. Just a quick formula for people out there who want to calculate their child's bladder volume. And I think this is important because most of the mums I see in my clinic, they don't know the bladder volume. And it's easy. It's the child's age plus 2. So, for example, let's take a 6-year-old. Okay. That would be 8 ounces.
So,
or a
child's
8-year-old,
age plus the 2 ounces.
Exactly. Or an 8-year-old would be about 10 ounces. And if you're metric, 1 ounce is 30 milliliters. Okay. So yeah, it's just very simple. It's just the child's age plus 2. That's the bladder volume.
That's how much their bladder can hold. So if it's supper time, let's say, and we're looking at maybe having a glass of water or milk, you should keep that in mind?
I think so, you know, but let's look at it like this. Let's say the child limits the fluid at night, goes to bed, but the bladder is still, the kidneys still make a lot of urine, and the bladder is small, and the child is a deep sleeper. That is exactly how the problem may occur, because the child just doesn't wake up. They are very, very deep sleepers. That's one of the other reasons. And so the theory why it gets better when you get older is you're not as deep a sleeper and your bladder volume gets a little bit bigger.
So this is something that children do grow out of eventually.
They do. But while we wait for them to outgrow things, the problem is that they cannot go to camps. And a Leisure marketing survey recently actually showed that, ironically, and I found this data very interesting, the vast majority, up to 70% of parents, are very concerned about that problem when the child goes to camp. 3 times more concerned than they are about anxiety, 4 times more concerned than they are about obesity. So if your child is obese or anxious, goes to a camp, parents are excited or worried about this, but not as worried as when the child is a bedwetter.
Okay, let's talk about some solutions then, because we want our kids to be involved in these social activities.
Well, restricting fluid may help, cutting out dyes may help, but those things are sort of a little bit iffy. The big thing is to make sure the child is not constipated. That's one of the top number one things to check out. Constipation really can aggravate this problem, so make sure you keep I hate to talk about this in breakfast show, but it is what it is. Keep a stool diary. You've got to look at the stool of the patient. And if the stools are very big and large, then that can contribute to the problem.
That's saying that they're essentially constipated or close to being constipated.
Yeah, and that may make the problem worse. So make sure, the solution is make sure the child's not constipated, proper diet, a lot of liquids, those kind of things. And the second thing, too, is to consider medication. There is a medication called DDAVP Melt. It's new. I talked about this previously with Dave, maybe 10 years ago, but in that time we had a spray, an intranasal spray, and now we have this melt tablet, which is really neat because it just melts on your tongue. You don't have to take any water, you don't have to spray it up your nose, so it's just compliance is just so much easier now,
About 30 seconds left, Dr. Neiman, but if you're talking to a young boy who wants to go to a camp this summer, what are you telling him in terms of him being afraid of doing that?
Well, I would just tell him there is help. We have medication available. Explain the medication to him and try and use that medication. And the main thing is to give hope, That's what I love about my job is we can give people hope. And there is a solution, in this case, DDAVP Melt. There's also the alarm. We don't have time to talk about that. But that's another thing, another time for another day. It's a bedwetting alarm.
Okay, there are some solutions out there, and that is good news. Dr. Neiman has a fabulous website with this topic and so many other topics that you'll be tackling when you're raising your children. We'll have a link to that on our website, breakfasttelevision.ca. Dr. Neiman, thank you for coming in this morning.
Good to be back on such a nice sunny day.
It is a beautiful day. We are going to take a break here on BT. We are right back. We have your entertainment headlines still ahead.
If I gave it all the way for
Closed captioning is brought to you by Crimson Lingerie, the bra fitting specialists, with cup sizes from A to J.
Only at the break. It's the biggest pocket coil sale of the year. Save on pocket coil sleep sets from the world's largest manufacturers. And now exclusive to the break,